Sexual liberation. We worship sexual liberation. The concept of being able to express my sexuality any which way I like has become an idol. And I'd say this finally. Why is it similar today than it was then? Many, many people are aware or deeply conscious of this unknown God that Paul speaks about. Every one of you, the only reason you're here is because something, just something, whether it was your parents brought you or whether you thought you'd just visit, but just something, there's a slight something deep in your heart. And I know why it's there, because it tells me in Romans chapter 2 that everyone is created, Romans chapter 1, everyone's created in the image of God. And in Romans 2 it says their mind, their consciousness tells them there is a God. And I want to tell you about that unknown God today. I want to tell you about the same unknown God that Paul spoke about. So I come to the answer to the question, why are we in Vue Screen 7? Why is X1 Church? Why is Christ First Watford at Screen 7? I'll tell you why. Simple. We want to be a bridge for the good news. We want to be a bridge for the good news. I said earlier that I would explain why and how we at X1 will make every effort to bridge the gap between secular culture and the church. A massive gap has arisen, and there needs to be churches that stand up and say, we will be reckoned to make every effort to bridge that gap. So it's not a huge chasm that you fall into some moat and you're eaten by crocodiles and other vicious beasts before you get to the castle. No, we're going to bridge a gap. We're going to make a gap so that people that are living without God, people that are broken, people that are in a fractured society, amidst divorce, being wrecked, havoc, people that have been broken in their past, people that have had traumatic family relationships, people that are in debt and struggling, they will have a bridge between the glorious good news that Jesus is alive and the culture that says he doesn't exist. We want to be that type of church. So why? I said why and how. Why should we even bother? Why should we even bother? I'll tell you why. We have the ultimate good news that anyone could ever dream of hearing or believing. I personally believe that there is a creator God that made everything we see, everything we don't see, everything we know, and things that we will never ever see because it's still yet to be discovered. I believe that creator God made man and woman in his image. That's why we long for community. That's why there's love. That's why there's a sense of justice. That's why there's a sense of hope, a sense of purity, a sense of love. All those things are there because we were made in the image of this God. And I believe we messed up. I believe we said, you know what? Living for you, God, just seems not as cool as living for myself. So what I'm going to do is worship my own ideas, live for myself, and you can do your thing. And so what happens is we fall into what has become a culture of brokenness and distance from God. And I do not have to stand up here. It's not my job to stand up here. Just turn the news on to see what our culture is like. It's not the church saying how jacked up our culture is. Just turn the TV on. And that's not the way it should be. I'm sorry, that's not the way it should be. So we become distant from God, and how on earth do we restore that relationship? How on earth is there hope? Simple. Jesus sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross so that the chasm between God and man could be restored, because he could put on Jesus all the pain and the punishment we deserve for separating ourselves from him, from choosing not to live for him, for telling him to keep his own agenda. Jesus makes a way for us to come into a relationship with him. And if this is true, if the gospel of Jesus Christ is true, I say if, for some of you it might not be today that you feel it's true, but if it is true, and we were not to tell anyone, we would be like a very, very sick individual who knew the cure for cancer and chose not to tell anyone because he wanted to keep it to himself. That is a sick individual. So why would I, if I believe that relationship with God is the most awesome, most wonderful experience that any human could know, because I'm in the middle of living it. There is testimony after testimony in this room about how he changes your life, and hope starts to come, and you start realizing there's more to life than this. Why would I keep that message to myself? I will promise you this, as a church, we will never force it on anyone. That's the difference. But I'd be a sick individual, if this is true, to keep it to myself. We would be a sick church that if we had the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ and kept it to ourselves. See, that's what the monologue was about earlier. Paula was referring to a story in the Bible about a man called Zacchaeus. The life transformation that takes place when someone encounters God. The story of Zacchaeus is a man who basically cheated from every single person he could extra money. He was a tax collector, and what he'd do is just add a little bit, became an extremely wealthy man. And you know what? One day Jesus was coming into town, and Zacchaeus was so certain that this was a good man and a great man that he climbed a tree. And Jesus, instead of saying, "You sick person, I hope you get yourself sorted out, then you can come talk to me," he said, "Zacchaeus, I will eat in your home tonight." We want to be that type of church. No matter how jacked up, how messed up you are, we want to come into your lives and spend time with you. We're not going to judge you. We're going to love you. And that's what that story is about. This man transformed from someone you wouldn't want to associate with because he was so self-centered and loved his money to someone who's transformed because he met Jesus. Our culture is in deep trouble. Us 21st century educated moderns want desperately to disagree. But we are stuck in sin, worshipping our idols. And we desperately need to be restored in relationship to the unknown God, who, by the way, is Jesus. You will, of course, react against everything I've just said with something verging on horror. What? Sin? Not me. Worshipping idols? Not me. But hear me out. Sin isn't only doing bad things. That's the problem. We've put across, whether the church did it or whether it's just a cultural thing, as long as I don't murder, kill, rape, steal, etc., I'm not a bad person. Sin isn't about doing bad things. It is more fundamentally about making good things into ultimate things. Sin is building your life and meaning on anything, even a very good thing, more than on God. Whatever we build our life on will drive us and enslave us. Sin is primarily the age-old problem. It's idolatry. You see, I could be an amazingly good person, but if I worshipped my marriage more than God, and I made my marriage define my other relationships, if anyone spoke against my wife, I hated them and cast them aside. There's always a problem. Problems start arising. Unless God is your central person, unless He is the person you worship and live for, everything else becomes an idol. And it's not normally things as pure and as good as marriage. It's normally things like wealth and prosperity and having fame and having a place. Our hearts are always controlled by something. Power. We want to be known as a person with power. Approval. I want to be loved by people, so I do everything I can to make sure I'm approved. Comfort. Image. So many of us worship image. As long as I'm seen as someone who's cool and with it and hip, or however you say it, as long as people see me in a good place, and we worship that, we're controlled by it. Some of us worship religion. As long as I do the right things and I have a higher moral ground because I'm such a good person because I believe these things, then I'm good. Or irreligion. I'm going to do everything I can to prove that I'm not going to be a follower of God, and we worship that. I want to be so different. Maybe I should allow Lily Allen to say some of these things more clearly than me. Many of you know the artist Lily Allen. All right, she recently wrote a song called The Fear. Sometimes I believe secular artists, people that don't know God, say things far more clearly than a guy like me can standing behind a pulpit. Because I'm meant to say these things, aren't I? But not these stars. Listen to this. I want to be rich, and I want lots of money. I don't care about clever, I don't care about funny. I want loads of clothes, and I want truckloads of diamonds. I heard people die when they're trying to find them. And I'll take my clothes off, and it'll be shameless, because everyone knows that's how you get famous. I look at the sun, and I look in the mirror. I'm on the right track. Yeah, I'm on to a winner. I don't know what's right and what's real anymore. I don't know how I'm meant to feel anymore. When do you think it'll all become clear? Because I'm being overtaken by the fear. Life's about film stars and less about mothers. It's all about fast cars and cussing each other. But it doesn't matter because I'm packing plastic, and that's what makes my life so fantastic.